Lee Shackelford. We're live. How are you?
We are. Well, I'm glad to be alive.
Indeed. Indeed. In 2025 or whatever year this is,
Yeah, it's good to be alive in 2025.
Yes, indeed. That does rhyme.
It
Live.
does.
Five.
Yep.
And I don't know why this just popped into my head, but for some reason I wanted to say number 5 is alive. Remember that?
Yeah.
Short
Right.
circuit.
Yeah, number 5 is alive. Yeah,
Number
Johnny
5
Five.
is
Yes,
alive.
that's right. Yeah, one of the, I have been building a collection of robots from various franchises, and I remembered sharing a picture of my robot collection online, and somebody said, "Why don't you have Johnny Five?" So, it's a good question. I need a Johnny Five.
I always liked number 5. I mean, that was one of the movies I can remember. Obviously, if I'm still quoting it from way years past and
Yeah,
back and
but
whatnot.
that was catchy. As catchphrases go, that was pretty good. Johnny Five is alive.
Yes, indeed.
Number 5 is alive.
So, hello, Win Grace, and for everyone that might be listening in the chat or watching the chat at a later date, Clarence will be joining us at some point in the future. He had another commitment that is causing him just to be a little bit wibbly wobbly, lady weighty in the time stream.
MI6.
Yep.
He's
So-
talking to somebody much more important than us,
Yes.
basically. So,
He's talking to Shannon Perry.
talking to his wife. No.
Yes, indeed.
Fans of Discussing Trek will get the whole story about who he's talking to right now. So,
Yes, indeed.
he's been doing good with this stuff.
All right, well, Lee, I want to get, this is your lucky day. I want to get into this. So, as I like to say when we are getting ready to go, here we go again. The Discussing Network presents Discussing Who, a Doctor Who podcast. I'm Kyle Jones, and I want to start by welcoming back Lee Shackelford. Mr. Shackelford, how are you?
Logical, since I'm the only other one here. So,
Well,
Yeah.
I might say, Lee Shackelford, how are you doing also?
exactly. Doing great. Doing just great. And hope you are the same.
I am indeed the same, and I want to do a quick shout out to our friend Tasha Pierce.
Tasha.
She is in the chat as well as Win Grace. Thank you both. You are always with us, and we very much appreciate it. But who is not with us yet? None other than Clarence Brown. This is his lucky day because he gets to join us late. So I promise I will try to get all my funny puns and dad jokes and all that out of the way maybe before Clarence gets here.
Save them for him.
Yeah, or maybe I'll save him. Who knows?
Yeah.
Or maybe I'll just be inspired when he gets on and just
Well,
go crazy with it.
It's better when it's organic. That's true.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
Well, the only bit of news that I have seen, and this was just cursory today, so I don't know the exact details, but I think they will not be streaming the finale at 8 a.m., in the UK and then terrestrial viewing. I
Right.
think when the stream happens is going to be the same time that the terrestrial viewing happens, which means Disney Plus will be getting it much later in the day than we've been
Yes.
getting it, because I think
That's
they
right.
want everybody to watch it at the same time.
yes. And not get online and spoil it for other people.
Yes.
Yeah, 11 a.m. Pacific, I believe. So 2 p.m. Eastern.
Ah, okay. Not. So that'll be 1 p.m. Central. So there we go. So what's going on with you? Anything interesting since our last recording?
Not really. I'm still plugging away at all the different things I'm working on. The season finale I've read, though, this week, I guess this is the other thing that's been happening this week, is that season finale was going to show in theaters in the UK. I had misunderstood that was sort of globally, but when I mentioned that to you, you said, yeah, in the UK, but not here.
That's my understanding.
They're going to show the last 2 episodes as a 2-parter theatrically.
So I'm assuming if they're doing that they would show on finale day, right?
Yeah. because otherwise people will come out of the theater and get right on
Right.
social
Yeah.
media with spoilers. So I don't know. So
I guess if you're paying for a movie experience, it would make sense than to have, let's just say it's 45 minutes. You go into the theater for 45 minutes as opposed to, an hour and a half.
yeah,
So, I mean, I can understand that. And I remember the last Doctor Who thing I saw in theaters was a showing of the End of Time Part 1 and 2. And obviously it was End of Time Part 1 and 2,
right.
uh,
Yeah.
the complete story.
Yeah, and to be able to show that without interruption, to just make that a 90-minute story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
It
True,
took me
true,
back to my introduction to Doctor Who when PBS affiliates, I guess it was the affiliates who did this, they would take a 4-part Tom Baker story and cut them together. And it would be 2 hours long.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the longest time, I wondered, about this TV show that was a movie every episode, But then I saw Genesis of the Daleks, which is 6 episodes, and they had to figure out how to break that up. So it was 2 90-minute broadcasts. It was very strange. Anyway, then I said, I think I see what's going on here. Yeah. So anyway.
You've prompted me to ask a question that we may have asked before on this podcast. We may not, but if we have or haven't, we're going to ask it again. And that question is, do you ever see Doctor Who in the future going back to serialized 24-minute episodes as opposed to the long form of 45 minutes? Would you, and if so, would you rather have 16 24-minute episodes as opposed to 8 45 or, on average?
Yeah. That's a good question because I know part of the thinking back then was that it's an economy. If you're going to do something like Talons of Wing Chiang, we're committing to period dress and, we're going to redressing streets in London and things like that, then we better sit here for a while. We better make this last. So we're going to do 6 episodes of that, and so that you don't have to recommission a set and, Monster of the Week or whatever every single week. So, they had shorter episodes when they dragged the story out over 4.
Maybe so,
6 weeks.
because look at the episodes that we have. If you did break them up into 25-minute, let's just say 25, you could get a little bit more face time in the story, having a few more minutes tacked on, but still have 2-parters. The episodes that we've seen so far, that would be 6 episodes as opposed to 3. I'm just curious. I don't know how that would work, but I would be curious to see how it works.
Natasha says whichever way tells the best story is fine with me, and I have to agree with that.
Yeah.
It would depend very much on how things were written.
Very much so.
The writers would have to have that in mind that it's going to be a week before people can come back to this 24-minute story.
And do we have the attention spans to watch half a story?
Just right. Yeah.
So that is a very good question. But the next question is, Lee Shackelford, any other items of news before we move on?
Not that I'm aware of. Rumors, gossip is still rife that we will have a regeneration at Christmas. And I feel.
But are we
frankly,
even
that's-
having Christmas? Because I don't even know that there was a commissioned Christmas.
There's always Christmas.
I would hope so. But do we?
They may be holding off on that until they settle on what they're going to do, because what I have heard is that Shooty has become such a hot ticket that he's going to Hollywood, and that means he can't do this show in Cardiff anymore. So we're kind of being forced to.
And on top of that, I mean, we keep forgetting these episodes were filmed 2 years ago. So there
Two
you
years
go.
ago?
Yep, in 2023, they were filmed uh, between right about the time the 60th anniversary specials were being filmed, or right thereafter. So think,
I don't think I knew that. Well, I mean, I know I didn't know that. How
but you know
interesting.
what I do know? So
Oh,
obviously, if you didn't know that, that was a spoiler. But what I
yeah.
also know is a spoiler. If you have not seen Lucky Day, put us on pause, go out, watch the episode, come back, because from this moment forward, spoilers. Alrighty, the spoiler warning has gone out, and we are back to review Lucky Day. Lucky Day is the fourth episode of the 2025 series of Doctor Who, first airing slash streaming on the 3rd of May, 2025. It starred Ncuti Gatwa as the 15th Doctor, Verita Sethu as Belinda Chandra, and Millie Gibson as Ruby Sunday. It also featured the return of Unit. So, summary view. Lee Shackelford, I have no choice but to start with you.
Yeah, you could just ignore me, but
I could not. Well,
I,
okay, I'm ignoring you. So, Lee Shackelford, what say you?
oh yeah. It's been a long time since I've watched an hour of television in which I was just could not take my eyes off the screen like this. I don't bite my nails, but this was one that I would have if I did. So, uh, whatever else one may say about the episode, it certainly had me on the proverbial edge of my seat. What about you?
You know, I have to agree. As I was making my notes of this episode,
Mm,
I started picking it apart a little bit. But,
mm,
there was some logic that I couldn't hold on to just a little
mm,
bit. But first time viewing, watching it through for the first time, I agree with you 100 million%. It kept my attention. It was riveting. It made me root for bad things to happen. Uh, and I was
yeah,
relishing in that, and I was thinking to myself, no wonder I like Doctor Doom so much, because I'm relishing bad things to happen. But
yeah,
we'll, of course, get into that. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I know that there was a part that you and I both loved about it that we'll get into.
yeah.
But wow, I just thought it was a very good, good story. So before we started actually recording, Lee, you and I kind of had a side conversation that I said, hold this because I want to bring it
Mm.
up because I had a question. And here's my question. Lucky Day is technically considered a Dr. Light episode, but did
Yeah,
it really feel Dr. Light to you?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's there in the teaser and the tag, and otherwise he's just not there. And even more peculiarly, this season's companion isn't there either. Um, she had much less to do than the Doctor did. So it is like 73 yards. It is a whole television hour of Ruby Sunday, and yeah. So why? And you and I were theorizing that showrunners really wanted to have a story that spoke to the world as it is today. And if you're going to do that in the storyline, the story arc that we're playing with this season, that's a challenge because you literally can't go to today in this season. That's the whole problem that they're trying to solve. So what do? Well, you
Mm.
shunt sideways and tell the story centered on one of our other characters. Um, Everything that happens in this story could have happened to Belinda, but we haven't solved the problem of how to get her back to the Earth in the right year. So it makes sense. I'm just speculating that that's why a Ruby Sunday episode here.
Hmm. So I'm going to take it in two directions. The first direction is from a story, in canon storyline perspective. I liked everything that you said. You know, they can't get back, but we need a present day story, and this is the way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I loved the fact that we checked in on a companion and the doctor did not return and save the companion at the end. You know, I liked
True.
having that moment of despair in the companion. Not that I'm wishing bad
Right.
on the companion, but we don't often see or have an opportunity to see something stressful or bad happen to a companion and the doctor not be there to pull out the sonic screwdriver and fix
Yeah.
it at the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think we see something even better at the end that we'll get to, which is reminding me so much of the Doctor, the 11th Doctor, talking to Joe Grant on the Sarah Jane Adventures. And he details all of these things that he's seen her do throughout
Mm.
her life that she
Yeah.
never knew that he was watching. So I think that's very much
Huh.
parallel to what we saw there. He was watching, he just wasn't participating.
Yeah. Interesting.
Now, that's one
Mm.
way. The other
Right.
way is remember, and I'm thinking particularly in the 80s, but I'm sure it was done in the 90s, 2000s, but for some reason I'm focused on the 80s and definitely in the 70s. But remember when you were watching, say, a sitcom, and all of a sudden you're watching an episode of the sitcom, and it's like, who are these people that one character goes and sees? And it's like, oh, that was a real pilot for another episode
No.
of a spinoff.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that the person who wrote this episode, McTighe, is
Mm-hmm.
also the showrunner of The War Between the Land and the Sea, which features Unit.
Yeah.
So I think from a
Hmm.
meta stance, this was, hey folks, you might like these people. Tune in
Yeah.
for The War Between the Land and the Sea.
We hope you do. Yeah. Huh.
So let's switch real quick to Conrad. And my question about Conrad overall, did you trust Conrad in the beginning or was his turn unexpected to you?
I was completely on board. I fell for it hook, line, and sinker. And I I've got questions.
Okay.
Because he says he's been following the TARDIS for years and that he's been talking to people, he's been interviewing people. But the big reveal is that he's been doing it to unmask what he calls is the lie, which I don't understand how he got there. It's, we know people believe, well, as the Red Queen and Alice says, 6 impossible things before breakfast. So, maybe the episode doesn't need to explain how he came up with the lunatic version of what he's experienced. But it is, to me, it's a surprise. He knows, he has to know that all of this is true. But somewhere along the way, he pivoted and is out there to unmask the lie. And I just thought that was interesting. But gosh, I just did this ever do a 180 on us? Once we understood what his agenda was, I just wanted to murder him. And
So,
because of how much that hurts Ruby as much as anything.
yes. And
Right.
see, my thing with him was I wanted to think that the way his mother reacted to him, whenever he was like, "Look, there's the Doctor
Mhm.
and a Belinda Chandra," and they,
Right.
and he sees the TARDIS materialize, so he's there watching it, and my brain wanted to say his upbringing influenced his view on life and made him
Yeah.
cynical,
Right.
perhaps.
I think that's what we have to take from that. That's the way that moment is played the way it is. You know, he's very happy about something and he gets hit for it. It's, yeah, what's that going to do to you?
True. So what about, you mentioned Ruby and you mentioned the podcast, and I want to ask you something about the podcast. What do you think about a companion agreeing to be interviewed on a podcast talking about the Doctor?
Yeah, I wondered about that too. Are there things that she's just not supposed to say? But she's had enough time to live this now. We have to assume that every companion who gets left behind and tries to go back to a normal quotidian life, at least on Earth, they're faced with kind of the same problem. They can tell people what happened, but probably nobody's going to believe them. Or you only talk to the people who do believe you. And meanwhile, living your life, you come up with versions of it that you can tell. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, but I could
You were
see
gone
her
for
telling
2
her
years,
mom
right?
and Cherry and her other mom.
Right.
But the fact that you're going and telling this, at the time, stranger who basically took a picture of you and put it online to kind of entice you, hook you in, you took
Yeah.
the bait. And, I'm not going to say the ignorance of youth, but is that it? Is it that she was naive in some point?
No, I think that she has, the first time we saw her, she was being interviewed. I think she's comfortable enough with being on camera in front of a mic that if somebody asks her a question that might somehow be compromising, she's got another answer for it ready. I think she knew exactly what she's doing.
Okay. All right. So maybe I didn't give her enough credit, because my first thought was, really? I would think the
Yeah.
doctor would say, rule number 565, don't do podcast about me.
Yeah.
You know.
If he's going to take people back home and drop them off, he's got to know this is going to happen. I don't know.
And it's almost like I want to now have a conversation other than it's bigger than the inside than it is on the outside, something to the effect of, now you can't tell people about us.
Mm-hmm.
Because think about it, go back to the very first episode, he kidnapped 2 teachers because he was afraid they might say something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So,
And we have changed so much since then that we seem to be very casual now about letting people know that there's an alien who comes and helps us from time to time, and a lot of us have traveled with him and that kind of thing. And I think it all changes in the first 10th Doctor story, which for some reason, it's my favorite.
New Earth.
Christmas.
The Christmas Invasion.
episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Christmas Invasion is what it's called. I always want to call it Runaway Bride, but it's not. Christmas Invasion. Once there's been the giant ship hanging over London, and then Torchwood shot it down, it's kind of like, hey, the cat's out of the bag now,
Very good point.
That's been addressed in canon. That's
that is a very, very good point that I did not even
Yeah.
think of. That is an excellent point. Now, before we move on,
people say to Donna, "How could you not know about
know
this?"
this,
She
yes.
didn't know.
Well, how do
Yeah,
you miss
so-
it every time?
Right.
But what I don't want to miss is something that Tasha said in the chat, which is his upbringing, his being Conrad, convinced him that the truth isn't what he witnessed, but what he was told.
Yeah.
And not getting specific here, but, how many times have we been told as a population, don't believe what the news says, believe what I say?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And that's kind of what they're becoming, is what this think tank was, here we're going to expose UNIT. But speaking of UNIT, I have a question. Is it feasible to you that UNIT fell for this ruse? Or did
That's a
they
good question.
act on Ruby's behest?
Well, I mean, one of the things I've always liked about UNIT, sort of for story purposes, is that they are far from infallible. And they're not as screwed up as Torchwood, but they do make colossal blunders. And sometimes, the doctor's there to sort it out, and sometimes he's not. So, I don't know. That's an interesting question. I like the fact that Ruby can whistle and she gets UNIT. That's kind of nice.
Well, more importantly, Clarence Brown, summary view. Welcome.
Hello.
We told everyone that you had been lost in the time stream, so glad that you synced back up to 2025. But summary view, what did you think of this episode?
Absolutely loved it. For it being a Doctor Light episode, I feel like it hit on all those things I love about those Doctor Light episodes, I would say. And how the twist was played out, I thought was just like really, really well done. Never saw that coming. Poor Ruby.
Poor Ruby.
So many emotions. But overall, I just really loved the episode, man.
So considering the fact you're on this podcast, but you do and have done for many years other podcasts, I want to go back and ask you the question that we were just talking about, which is, what do you think of Ruby participating in a podcast that's discussing the Doctor?
Was she participating, or did she know or somehow figure out that guy was the guy that she needed to give the antidote
Conrad.
to? Yeah, Conrad. I thought it was to me, it was partly she needed to get Conrad the antidote, but also I'm thinking of Love and Monsters. I'm thinking of other episodes where we've seen people be on the fringes of what the Doctor has going on, looking in from the outside on this craziness of monsters and other things that have evaded their community and country. So I kind of feel like it was okay in a way, but because are people looking at this podcast as like this conspiracy podcast and not really taking it seriously? UNIT is bad, and this is all the ways they're bad, that type of thing. So I didn't really see it too far out of the rim, because nobody really knows if she's a real companion of the Doctor. They just think she's some pundit on the panel.
Mm-hmm. Very good point. She could very much be a paid actor, to use Conrad's own words. It could be an actor. She might not even existed. Who knows? She could have been an AI creation that was on the podcast. Who knows? So I want to talk about, let's jump into what Conrad did. He's live streaming this exposure of UNIT, and he's calling them out, and then they expose the people that work there. Lee, what was your feeling watching this and seeing this person start to demean characters that you've gone to know, quote unquote, and love over the years?
Yeah, we're building right up to that moment where he has something bad to say about the Brigadier, and I just love that we got this extreme close up of her face saying, "I'd be careful what you say about my father." And I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, "Oh, you may have crossed the line there, Buster. That may be finally it. She's gonna put you down with the Weevils." A quick phone call to Torchwood, and you can be in the cage with the Weevils. It's and he doxes them. I think that was the thing that really made my stomach do a little flip flop there. I thought, well, what is he really going to do to them? Oh my God, he can. Yeah, he can do that.
Classic internet.
Well, how? Okay. Well, he's really thought it all out.
So, Clarence, what did you think?
I remember me and my girlfriend were watching this, and I had just explained to her who Kate Lethbridge Stewart was, and then like immediately he goes into talking about her father. Like, oh boy, that ain't good. But I'll say overall, I love how Unit, and I'm loving how Unit in general in these last two seasons has been portrayed. I know I've famously said I don't love Unit in Doctor Who, but man, there's something about how they've been presented in these last few seasons that I've really, really liked. So, yeah, him talking about characters or demeaning characters that we love, doxing them, it's just classic internet. It's what internet trolls do. They dox people, and it's. I think it was just a wonderful, wonderful portrayal of how the internet can go wrong. A person on the internet can go haywire, and he was a personification of that for sure.
You know, I really, speaking of Unit, I love seeing Shirley Ann Bingham back. You know, that was cool seeing her back because she hasn't been on there since the 60th anniversary. So that was cool to. And then he's making this accusation that she's using taxpayer funds because she's in a wheelchair. I mean, he is just the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
You know,
But they plan on
never
all our
miss a target.
fears. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
The whole taxpayer dollars. Do you know where your government money is going? Your hard-earned money is going. It's a secret organization that's doing all of these crazy things and pretending to do this to take your money. You know, just all the way. I want to say balls to the wall, but I probably shouldn't. But they took it all the way. They took it all the way with the internet troll thing, and I think it just worked great in this episode.
so do you guys see this as a commentary? Well, obviously, I think it's a commentary on media propaganda that's, you know, this conspiracy focusing your truth, whatever your truth is, and trying to, whatever doxing or whatever the word is, you know, to make things that are actually good bad because that's your agenda, whether it's to make money, whether it's political power, whether it's fill in the blank, you know, whatever that is, whatever the capital is that you're getting back, you know, that's part of it. But could it also be a little bit of a commentary on what they call the keyboard warriors that get on and the power of the keyboard because you're hiding behind it? Or is it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, they're saying this is what the problem is. It's not just that he's saying it; it's that so many people are passing it on. That's where the real danger is.
All
Passing
right,
it on
so
without question again.
So Clarence, what do you think? And then I have a follow-up question.
I agree 100% what Lee just said. It's certainly on the nose when you think about, you know, internet gone bad, people doing outrageous things on the internet. But you probably can extrapolate a little bit and look at even some of the far left or right media people that are on the internet who kind of do the same thing in whatever arena they're in. I can name a few names that I'm not, but there's definitely some prevalent in YouTube or streaming personalities similarly that kind of, it might not be Unit, but they are pushing or peddling something else that is very similar. And I think it's to the credit of Doctor Who, even though they were kind of on the nose with the type of activity this person does, they took it to our Unit. They didn't take it anywhere else. So that's kind of what, you know, we expect our storytelling to do for us, to kind of give us this lens on some other area that has kind of took it too far in a similar way.
All right, so let me ask this to you guys. Let's use us as an example. We are out there. We're media for all intents and purposes. You know, we're streaming on YouTube. We are an audio podcast that's been around since 2016. So, you know, we're out there. We're talking about these things. We're wanting listeners because that's why we do this. We want people to listen to us. We may enjoy what we're doing, but we want people to listen to us. What makes us different than someone who, let's just say, goes and calls ourselves disgusting who? And, we're talking about how RIP Doctor Who, and, Doctor Who is horrible. Doctor Who is woke. Doctor Who, we hate Doctor Who. So what makes us different?
There's a certain dramatic flair to the extreme, whichever direction that extreme is going in. Well, obviously, we're not pedaling in the extreme. We're pedaling in the rational, I think, for the most part.
I hope so.
Objective opinion of these episodes. So, I mean, you certainly can go to extremes in either direction, and that's kind of not what we do. We're not saying it's the best thing ever, but we're also not saying, oh, that Doctor Who always. We're giving an objective opinion, mostly positive, mind you, thank goodness. But that's just not something I would want to be involved in, because obviously, if the show is in any indication, it seems like it's a lot of work for Mr. Conrad to have to spark up all this nonsense.
Yeah. Lee, what do you think? Do you agree?
Absolutely, and I think the key, apart from the shining purity of our hearts and souls, is that that's the real difference right there. Is that if we have an agenda, the three of us, it's to try to be positive about the show, and I just don't see that getting in anybody else's lane. I don't see, there's nothing manipulative about that. It's not. I don't think it's our intent to ever try to hypnotize people into thinking that the show is good when some parts of it aren't. We talk about that. But we try to be fair. Tasha's giving us thumbs up for being fair.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
Well, and I think you hit on a word of intent. When we sit down to have a conversation, in part to enjoy the conversation between the three of us. I mean, and the happy medium is of media, that we're making media of a conversation. But our intent is to have a good conversation. Our intent is not to, let's make $5,000, $1,000, $1 or what off of this particular episode. That's not our end all goal, because
unless you want to pay us. No.
Right, but you get
if
my
you want
point.
to,
Yeah, if you want to, that's fine. But that's not. You didn't make your comments, either of you, to think what is the most provocative, evocative, whatever that I can say that might turn into a soundbite. That's not our intent.
That's right. No, when you coined the title of the show, I thought that's great, because that's all we're going to do. We're just going to discuss it.
But when Grace says, "But you liking the show ruins my childhood," somehow, maybe, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kyle. And I think this episode is especially poignant because I don't know if our listeners know as much, but you have mentioned to us about how much the conversation around Doctor Who has been like a Debbie Downer for you.
Yes.
And it's like this type of conversation from Conrad here across the internet that kind of maybe yucks our yum,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right, and it has, it has affected my enjoyment of the show. We've said that to some degree. I still love the show. By all means, I love the show. Mm-hmm. But I don't engage on social media like I used to because of the toxicity. But I want to get into this ending. There is a point of no return, so to speak, for Conrad, where they basically show, they basically show this showdown with Unit. Mm-hmm. So, thoughts? What about the showdown with Unit?
Kate is flat out waterboarding this guy.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Isn't she? Is there any way in which she's just not waterboarding him? We're on her side because we know she's right. But is it okay for this critter to bite this guy's head off to make her point?
Yeah, was the secrecy of Unit or the reputation of Unit worth more than than having him, leading him to his demise? Huh.
There's a moment of the editing. It makes me want to go back and watch the episode again right now, because we only get one really kind of a postcard shot of the exterior of Unit at night, and it's this very impressive edifice. They took over the Avengers Tower, and the I think if you're listening to Connor at all, even to poo-poo him, there's a moment where you see that thing in the London skyline, and there's got to be a party that says, "Yeah, how much does that thing cost?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Our tax dollars are paying for that. But let's hear what he has to say.
Yeah.
And the talk that we get back from Ruby and from Kate to the world, talking to his camera, is, we're here to protect you. We're the good guys. Now, I'm going to let this monster eat his face off, but believe me, so
But
dramatically, I thought it was very effective, but I did wonder, what's the message here?
yeah. And even it's so crazy that even when he's faced with danger to that extreme, he turns right around and says, "Oh, that was fake too. You see the fake thing they just sent on me. Special effects are awesome." He was relentless in his pursuit to tarnish.
You can't
Unity.
shake him.
See, and I think that is a testament of those people who are so wound up in their false reality that they can't stop what they're doing.
That's absolutely true.
It's become so much of an ingrained compulsion, I want to say, that it's not that I think that they can't see reality from reality. It's whatever my agenda is. And he had that moment of fear. He thinks he's okay, and he goes right back into let's push it. Let's this and this.
Because that's how he makes sense of things now. He has to understand what just happened. Okay, that was a very impressive special effect. That's the only possible explanation for this. No,
So
my hero, Jonathan Swift, nearly 300 years ago, he said you can't reason somebody out of a position that they weren't reasoned into.
So Clarence, we made a comment. We made a comment earlier about the Doctor not coming back and saving Ruby at the end or making everything okay. But we also commented about how the Doctor still may not have been there in person, but he at least was still watching over her. So we have this scene where the Doctor takes Conrad into the TARDIS. Clarence, I'll let you go first. Lee, I think I know your thoughts on this. So, Clarence, what did you think about this particular scene?
I think I'll let Lee go first because I'm trying to remember the actual scene. You talking about the very end when he takes?
Yeah, where he takes Conrad into the TARDIS and basically tells him off.
He needed it. I mean, honestly, through it all, even though Conrad was doing this whole thing with I'm out Unit, which maybe has some good points in some aspects of it. The way he treated Ruby clearly showed he was just not a good person. And the way he was able to flip on her to such a degree, they were love and dovey. I thought they were really into each other. I felt so great for Ruby to have someone, to have happiness. I mean, as her parents did as well, which I thought was great. But to have that flip on his head, so we know what type of person we're dealing with. So I thought he just got what he deserved from the Doctor when he got the talking down to. I don't know if it's had much of an effect, but I think he got what he deserved.
All right. Well, for me, I I loved that. I love seeing a different side of this doctor, a serious side of the doctor. It's interesting that this is a doctor before he met Belinda Chandra, and we get that reference in the Robot Revolution that somebody told him that he would meet her, and this is when that happens,
Very nice.
obviously.
Yeah.
So that is interesting. And Tasha makes a reference in regards to Conrad. She says, and his whole identity is wrapped up in this false belief. If Unit is legit, is his whole life a lie? So I think that's very much on point.
That's,
So
that's how it works. That's how it works.
So he met.
know-
Go ahead, Lee. I'm sorry.
I'm getting error messages on my restream page here. Yeah, I was just going to say regarding Natasha's right on the money remark that is how this works, and I think the episode is pointing to that in Connor's doggedness to keep hanging on to this thing that any rational person would now understand is not true. But he's not being rational. That's why I brought up the Jonathan Swift quote. If you've invested in something emotionally, that's what matters. And no amount of facts will shake you from it. Facts, and it's part of my psychologist friends tell me this is part of what's so seductive about conspiracy theories is that once you have bought into one of them, whatever it's about, you now feel that you know something that other people don't, and other people are the ones who are floundering about, out there trying to understand what happened, but and that's a huge dopamine hit to your brain. It's an addiction. I know the truth. If the rest of you simpletons would just get on board, but I know, and it feels good. It feels good. But about this scene in the TARDIS, I love the fact that the camera is up on the top tier when we materialize, so we are looking down on Connor. And I thought that's the Doctor's point of view. And as that scene began and we saw that Connor was in the TARDIS and that we're looking down at him, and I thought, uh-oh. You effed up, buddy. I think you're about to get your ass handed to you. And the Doctor really showed him some grace, showed him some mercy.
Yeah.
So do you guys feel that this was a preachy moment?
Nah. I don't think so.
It is, but it didn't feel that way to me.
See,
Maybe because I was,
No, go
fist
ahead.
pumping the air. But I'm wondering if that's just because I agreed with him. But
See, that's my point. I wonder, I would really compare this to one of the episodes that we didn't really care for, Orphan 55. Oh, and I get to do it now. Clarence,
Yeah.
you're here. I get to say, Benny, have you seen Benny?
Shoot us now.
Yeah. So, but I remember in Orphan 55, we did not like that scene where the Doctor is berating the companions for all intents and purposes. And I actually took a clip of that, and she basically says, Earth's going to be okay. I can't, you want me to tell you that Earth's being okay, because I can't. In your time, humanity is busy arguing over the washing up while your house burns down. Unless people face facts and change, catastrophe is coming, etc., etc., etc.
yeah,
So it's really not that different from him saying what he did about you taking up the bandwidth and whatever. But Lee, your point, I think, is spot on. The difference in those two scenes is the Doctor is berating the companions versus the Doctor is berating someone who in the last hour we really don't like.
right. And if you're talking to several people about the future of humanity, you need to take better care of the planet. Well, what are they going to do? Okay, well, we'll go do that now.
Right.
That's what plays false about that sermon. at the end of Orphan 55 to me. It's like, okay, you know what? We already believed that. So why are you telling us like that? But in this case, it just makes perfect sense. The doctor's looking this guy in the eye and said, here's, here's the truth.
All right, so let me ask you guys this. Mrs. Flood, we see her again, and it looks like she's telling him it's his lucky day and she's letting him out. Any thoughts?
I'm trying not to think about Mrs. Flood.
Clarence?
She keeps popping up.
Well, I will say this. This is something that I noticed in the second viewing, which is there is some point in there that Conrad says to Ruby about the doctor, something about him and his box of tricks. And I thought that was a very peculiar wording. And I remembered finally where I'd heard that from. In the church on Ruby Road, Mrs. Flood tells the doctor something about you and your box of tricks. I just thought that was just an interesting repeated phrase.
Interesting.
Don't know what that means. I'm not trying to hint at something. I'm just saying that that's an interesting choice that those specific words were used twice.
So, I guess loosely related in relation to Mrs. Flood. What do you guys think of this episode as and we've had some similar to this before, but an episode that's an exploration of the companion that's left to live out life. That's a lot of what I felt from this episode. As it being Ruby trying to go on with a life, we hear where her parents are saying that she's always going on about the doctor, and it kind of consumed her from a certain point of view. It's kind of consumed her. So tying this back to Mrs. Flood, I wonder if that's a theme that we're trying to get. Well, if that's a theme or something that's connected to Mrs. Flood in a way, if she's a former companion or something that's been left to our own volition and not, kind of just going stir crazy about the doctor. I don't know. I'm just speculating here. It's just trying to tie it into something else. We've seen her wearing former companion clothes as well. So I don't know where that goes exactly, but that's kind of what I thought about when thinking about Mrs. Flood. Which, again, as Lee said, I try not to think about. But
Well, I know what I want to think about. I want to think about, do either of you have any other items before we get into our final ratings?
I was too wrapped up in the action of this story to even make notes. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, Clarence, what about you?
I know. I just think it was a well-executed episode. Just really enjoyed it.
All right. So, favorite scene. Lee, what was your favorite scene?
that it commenced with that materialization in the TARDIS, with the camera looking down on Connor. I just thought, oh boy, here we go, and I was not disappointed.
All right. Clarence, your favorite scene.
My favorite scene is when the crap was about to hit the fan. The Blinks went off in his hole and hid. Really got a giggle out of that.
So my favorite
Hot
scene.
taser lady.
My favorite scene actually was the scene with Kate. I really wanted it to be the doctor at the end, but it was Kate's scene where she's being a total badass. So that was my favorite scene. And I will lead into favorite quotes by saying my favorite quote came from Kate when she says, "Everyone, stay well back. It's coming, Conrad, and it's after you. It can feel your heartbeat. It smells the blood in your veins. So I'm wondering, how committed are you to the lies you've told? What do you truly believe?" I mean,
And
just the
remember, we're on
way she executed those lines with just that hint of venom, You know, it's coming after you. You know, I just loved that. So that was my favorite quote. Lee, what was yours?
Yeah, maybe no surprise, but just this little bit here. Then along comes this noise. All day long, this relentless noise. Cowards like you weaponizing lies, taking people's insecurity and fear and making it currency.
Mm.
I've been repeating that ever since I saw it.
Awesome. Clarence, favorite quote?
Bear with me just a little bit. Mine is from an interaction between Kate and Conrad. Conrad says, you think you're so superior up in your tower looking down on us, keeping you safe. I want a confession on camera. Admit the lies. Show us the monster costumes. Show us the tech that you're hiding that we paid for. You're deluded, says Ruby. Conrad, grown-ups are talking. Come on, Commander-in-Chief, admit it, or you're a coward like your father was. You should be very careful what you say about my father. His only legacy was a pack of lies. He was 100 times the man you are.
Brilliant, 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 brilliant. So, not favorite quote, but final rating. Lee, I'll start with you. Final rating.
I'm giving this 5 hashtags out of 5.
Okay. Clarence, final rating.
I'm going to give this, give it a 5. I'm giving 5 crazy podcast hosts out of 5.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. You were talking about me. All right. I am going to give this 5 retreating Vlinxes out of 5. So there we go. I really enjoyed this episode, and I think we did too. You know, usually I'm not a big Dr. Light episode, but I didn't feel Dr. Lightish in this one. You know.
Well, Blink's the best episode ever, so
yeah,
we have it.
Yeah. So says the fans.
Yeah.
That I hope to never see again.
Well, they're real now, so who knows?
Yeah.
Oh,
They've
God.
got last names. Yeah.
They have a
All right.
podcast, too.
So for everyone listening, thank you everybody for in this chat. Grace, Tasha, always, it is a pleasure to have you with us. And for everyone listening, thank you for joining us. And with that, we will be back next time.